Yeah, it has been one shooting after the next for several days here in Seattle, but it's not just the number of shootings they're responding to, it's the number of rounds fired in some of these shootings that really stuck out to me. In one case, there were 146 rounds fired just at one shooting scene. The community is outraged, and today the chief of police told me she is too. One after another, gunshot victims started showing up at Harborview Medical Center. 4 in total, but police say the victims aren't cooperating with investigators. Seattle police believe at least 2 of the victims were shot here at the Stan Sayers Park in South Seattle. Neighbors tell me they heard around a dozen shots in the park.
More yelling and squealing tires, and people left.
This neighbor didn't want to be identified, but says gunfire is a regular occurrence, and he's tired of it. What would you like to see happen that's not happening now?
Well, what seems to help the most is a police presence.
What are you hearing from the community?
Well, the community is frightened, and I'm sure they're outraged, as they should be.
Seattle's interim police chief, Sue Rahr, said the department is doing what they can with the resources they have.
We're just stretched too thin, so we have a few detectives to send to one scene, and then pretty soon we have another scene. We're literally running out of bodies to cover all these scenes.
Complicating things further is the fact that shooting victims have been leaving the scene before first responders get there.
We've had multiple shooting scenes. We have had different sets of people showing up at different hospitals with gunshot wounds. They won't cooperate with the police. Right.
How does that limited number of officers who are on duty at that moment impact the investigation?
Well, the thing that impacts the investigation most is the lack of cooperation from victims.
Data from Seattle police shows reports of shootings and shots fired are on par with the last 2 years, but significantly higher than 5 years ago. That as the number of SPD officers has continued to drop.
Just keeping up with the numbers of shootings has been a real challenge.
For now, Chief Rahr says Seattle police will do what they can to hold the shooters accountable. But she also says the number of guns in the wrong hands is something that can't be undone quickly.
I don't see this subsiding anytime soon.
Now, I asked the chief today about the connection here between gun violence and the street racing. She told me there's definitely a link, and it's something the intelligence officers here at Seattle Police are trying to keep a handle on. They say they're going to be doing some proactive patrols about this weekend, but keep in mind they also have to juggle several other events like Pride and the 4th of July, and she just says it's a big strain on the city's resources. Reporting live from Seattle Police Headquarters, Jeremy Harris, KOMO News.
A good Wednesday morning and welcome to ARC Seattle. I'm Mo Hyder, guest hosting for Steve.
We're just moving through the week.
We are. It's already the middle of the week.
Yeah, already at Wednesday. I'm Tyra Majors. Thanks for joining us. We begin with the hottest topics on our feeds right now. It's a top trending story online. Gun violence in Seattle. What the Seattle Police Department says makes these investigations so difficult.
Plus, the city of Seattle and police officers now ordered to pay hundreds of dollars to protesters. Why a jury determined police violated the rights of those protesters.
And the city of Seattle is pushing for a new street racing law, why it's taking new urgency.
And it's been one shooting after another in Seattle for days, and now the police department admits they're struggling to put a stop to the gun violence.
On Monday alone, 4 gunshot victims showed up to local hospitals, all within a 1-hour span. That same night, a man was found shot to death under the Ship Canal Bridge. And in another shooting over the weekend, police say they found 146 shell casings just at one scene. SPD says part of the problem finding with the shooters is that the victims don't always cooperate with investigators, or they leave the crime scene before first responders can get there. Other issues are SPD's limited resources. Interim Chief Sue Rahr says they barely have enough officers to respond to every call.
We're just stretched too thin, so we have a few detectives to send to one scene, and then pretty soon we have another scene. We're literally running out of bodies to cover all these scenes. The thing that impacts the investigation most is the lack of cooperation from victims. That puts us behind at the very beginning.
Statistics from SPD show there were 291 total shots fired. Calls in Seattle from January to May. That's an increase of 8% over the same period last year. 8 of those turned deadly compared to 18 at this time last year.
And lots of people are weighing in on social media, including one person who said, quote, "What's that tell you when the victims won't cooperate with the cops? They're not victims, they're criminals or afraid for their or their families' lives." And another person placing the blame on Seattle's elected leaders, saying, quote, "Criminals at all levels know that the city leadership has failed the police department and the citizenry So obviously a lot of opinions going on that one, but a lot of it is the timing of it all. We're coming off a year of record number of homicides. They're also the interim police chief right now. Still need to hire more officers. I saw a report that more are leaving than they're gaining right now. So there's a lot going on that the police department, the city, really has to handle while they're dealing with a number of shootings consecutively.
Yeah, recruiting and retaining officers has surely been a problem for the department, and Sue Rahr really stepping in at such a critical time and a hard time, like you mentioned, with all the homicides and the reports of gunfire. And I am personally just tired of the gun violence, and I can't imagine what it must be like for those investigators on scene when there's no victim to ask questions, or once they find out if they're okay or not, like they don't know what led up to this because the victim's gone. They don't know or have any guidance of who shot them because the victim is gone. So it just sounds like a whole spiral of issues here, and hopefully we can figure out some solutions soon.
Absolutely. Well, our coverage on the gun violence in Seattle continues in the next half hour with the Deep End.
Yeah, today we're going to be joined by Lee Stoll. She joins us to talk about the community meeting being held tonight to address public safety concerns and when neighbors will get a chance to talk to city leaders about those solutions. Well, the city of Seattle and several police officers are now ordered to pay 4 anti-police graffiti protesters a whopping $680,000.
Oh, after a week-long trial, a federal jury determined police violated the rights of those protesters during the pandemic. Braden Pence represented the 4 protesters who sued the city for their arrests for writing peaceful protests and anti-police messaging in sidewalk chalk during a 2021 demonstration that happened outside the East Police Precinct. The federal jury determined officers involved acted within malice or oppression in regards to the protesters' constitutional rights, and the arrests and bookings were retaliatory. Pence adds police were not supposed to book people for nonviolent offenses during this point of the pandemic as a way to prevent overcrowding in the King County Jail.
At the heart of it, this case was about the Black Lives Matter movement. My sincere hope for the police department is that they take this verdict seriously, that they are treating protesters no differently than they would anyone else, and that they don't discriminate against them simply because the protesters are criticizing police.
And also that lawsuit led to an injunction that kept Seattle police from making graffiti-related arrests until the Ninth Circuit Court reversed that decision earlier this year. Now, Pence says he plans to ask the court to reinstate the injunction.
SPD says it's working to get us a response to the verdict, and a lot of people were shocked by this. I was looking through our website, KOMOnews.com, and there were over 100 comments. And it's a really polarizing issue here. Some people think, those people were not rightfully or peacefully protesting during that time. Others are on the side of the police officers or against. So it's a difficult one. It's a lot of money that they have to pay for sure.
Yeah, and think about the time that this was going on too. There's so much, unrest in the nation as well as dealing with the pandemic. It's a lot of things, really galvanizing the nation at the time. So very difficult a few years ago. It's hard to believe, that was just a few years ago.
I can't believe it. 4 years ago now. Yeah, mid-2020, and to be here in Seattle during that time. I don't think either of us. I came here
we came shortly after.
A couple months after, but
a lot of our colleagues, recall covering that. How difficult of a time that really was here in our city.
A lot of unrest.
Yeah. Well, the Seattle City Council also urgently pushing to enact a new law after dangerous street racing event over the weekend happened.
That illegal race involved more than 100 drivers and ended with 1 person shot and another run over in a crosswalk. Now, Council member Bob Kettle and City Attorney Ann Davison are proposing new legislation to increase the penalties for street racing. Right now, the law allows police to impound a person's car for 3 days after their first citation. A second offense can lead to forfeiting the car permanently. The new proposal would let police tack on a $500 fine to the registered owner of any car used for street racing. It would also expand the definition of street racing to include drifting and street takeover events.
The amount is one that we took into account. We had discussions. We decided it was something that could be meaningful, hopefully a deterrent, not excessive.
When people do these things, it's not like a bad thing or whatnot. Like, yeah, some people may seem like we breaking the law or stuff like that, but it's just like the Fast and Furious movies. It's a culture of life, like we love cars, we love engines, you know what I'm saying?
One thing Seattle's proposed street racing law leaves out is whether to penalize spectators. In Kent, city officials made being a spectator a misdemeanor crime. Councilmember Rob Saka says he may pursue a similar amendment for Seattle to better deal with the crowds who show up for these races.
And also on social media, one person shared their doubts a new law will make a difference, saying, quotes, "Where are the police? Just arrest and tow all the cars. New law? They will follow this new law right? And stupid and pathetic. How stupid and pathetic, rather." And another person commenting their frustration on KOMO's website, saying, quote, "Adding to the law doesn't do anything if prosecutors aren't willing to do their jobs. I'm the mind of that we let the victims sue the prosecutors personally for crimes committed by perpetrators that they do let go." You know, we saw recently in Tacoma that, you know, the spectators are penalized in many cases because that's also been an issue there. So it's also not the issue here in Seattle, but around the region that we cover here in Western Washington.
Yeah, all around the region and around the country as well. And, you know, something has to be done because it can't just go on like this forever with the same laws we have. I was listening to what that street racing advocate was saying about how it's like the movies. It's like Fast and the Furious. It's a culture. And I get you have a passion, but this isn't a movie. This is real life, and somebody got hit in a crosswalk. Another person got shot, and it's not the first time that that's happened. So, I mean, this is serious. You think about a movie with stunt doubles who are professionals and actors who aren't getting hurt. So I don't think it's okay. I know it's probably a nuisance for the neighbors as well with the noise, and you know they leave their the tire marks and things. Yeah, the tread marks.
Yeah. I mean, we saw it happen at Alki Beach. Saw it happen, you know, right outside, you know, here in downtown Seattle too. It's not only, you know, a danger thing. It's a disturbance to the neighbors and the businesses in the area that's trying to run businesses, or just people trying to stay home and things of that nature. So obviously something does need to be done about it because there can be a lot of ramifications if it doesn't, though.
For sure. We don't want to see any more people get hurt.